What if Daenerys Targaryen heard those bells and chose not to burn everything? Let's go deep into it. The bells are ringing. King's Landing has given up. The city has fallen. Cersei Lannister has lost. Every soldier in the streets has put down his sword. Every gate has been opened. The war is over. All Daenerys has to do is land, but she doesn't land. She sits on Drogon's back, high above the city, and she just stares. Her silver hair is blowing in the cold morning wind. Her purple eyes are locked on the Red Keep, and inside her chest, something is breaking apart. Something dark and old and furious is clawing its way up. She has lost so much. Jorah is gone. Missandei is gone. 2 of her dragons are dead. Her best friend was taken right in front of her, beheaded, while Cersei watched with cold eyes and a small smile. And now those bells are ringing, mocking her, telling her it's over, telling her she won. But it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like a trap. Drogon roars beneath her. He can feel it too. That fire inside her. That need to burn. To make them all pay. To turn every stone in that city into ash so that no one ever laughs at a Targaryen again. Her hand grips his neck harder. Her jaw tightens. And then something stops her. It is not a voice. It is not a memory. It is not even a thought. It is a face. Down below, far below in the narrow streets of King's Landing, a little girl is standing in the middle of the road. She is maybe 9 or 10 years old. She has dirty brown hair and a torn dress. She is holding a piece of bread to her chest with both hands like it is the most important thing in the world. And she is looking up, not running, not hiding, just looking up at the dragon in the sky with wide brown eyes. No fear, no anger, just wonder. Daenerys blinks. For 1 second, just 1 second, the fire inside her cools. She has seen that look before, in Essos, in the faces of slaves who had never seen a free sky, in the eyes of children who had grown up in chains and suddenly saw a world where chains didn't have to exist. They looked at her the same way, like she was something that came from a dream, the breaker of chains, not the burner of cities. Her hand loosens on Drogon's neck. She closes her eyes. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3, and then she pulls Drogon back, away from the Red Keep, away from the city. She doesn't burn it. Not today. Later, her advisors will call it the greatest decision she ever made. Historians will write long books about it. Songs will be sung. But in that moment, flying away from King's Landing with her hands shaking and her heart pounding, Daenerys Targaryen doesn't feel like a hero. She feels like a woman who almost became a monster, and that is the most terrifying feeling she has ever had. She lands outside the city gates in a field of dead grass. Drogon curls around her like a wall of black scales. Her hands are still trembling when Tyrion rides up to meet her. His face pale, his eyes wide. He saw what almost happened. Everyone saw. Your Grace, the city has surrendered. She doesn't look at him right away. She is staring at the gates of King's Landing. Big wooden gates, old and cracked, hanging open like a mouth. Through them, she can see the streets. People, soldiers putting down weapons, children peeking around corners. I know, she says quietly. Tyrion watches her carefully. He has learned over the years to watch her the way you watch a fire. With respect, with distance, because fires are beautiful, but they can also eat you alive. What do you want to do now, Your Grace? She finally turns and looks at him. Her eyes are dry, her voice is steady, but there is something new in her face, something he hasn't seen before, a kind of tiredness that goes deeper than sleep can fix. I want to go in, she says, alone. No army, no soldiers behind me. Tyrion's mouth opens. That is, Your Grace. That is not alone, she says again, just me. And Drogon behind me so they don't get any ideas. She walks through the gates of King's Landing for the first time in her life, and she is alone. The streets are silent. That is the first thing she notices. A city this big should be loud. Markets and horses and children and dogs. But everyone has gone inside. Every door is shut. Every window is a dark eye staring at her from behind cracked shutters. Saul. Somewhere above her, Drogon circles in the sky, his shadow passing over rooftops like a dark cloud. She passes a baker's shop. The door is barely open. Through the crack, she can see a man and woman holding each other, not moving, barely breathing. She walks past a well, past a blacksmith shop with a cold forge, past a pile of rubble where a building has fallen in, and then she stops, because that little girl is standing in the road again. The same brown hair, the same torn dress, the same piece of bread held tightly to her chest. Standing in the middle of the empty street, looking at Daenerys with those wide, serious eyes. Daenerys kneels down. She doesn't know why she does it. It isn't queenly. Tyrion would probably say something about optics, but she kneels down anyway until her eyes are level with the girl's eyes. "What is your name?" she asks. The girl stares at her for a long moment. "Sarah," the girl says. "My name is Sira." "That's a good name," Daenerys says. Sira looks at her for another second. Then she does something nobody in King's Landing is doing right now. She takes a step forward, reaches out her small, dirty hand, and touches Daenerys on the cheek. "You didn't burn it," Sara says. "I saw you almost burn it, but you didn't." Daenerys says nothing. Her throat is too tight for words. "Why?" Sarah asks. "Why didn't you?" Daenerys covers the little girl's hand with her own. "Because it was your home," she says, "and you didn't deserve to lose it." Sira thinks about this for a moment. Then she holds out the piece of bread. "You can have some if you want," she says. "I found it this morning." Daenerys lets out a breath that is almost a laugh. She takes a small piece. They sit down together on the steps of a closed shop, a queen and a street child, sharing bread in a city that is holding its breath. And slowly, one by one, the doors begin to open. But the city opening its doors does not mean the war is over, because Cersei Lannister is still in the Red Keep, and Cersei Lannister has never in her life simply given up. By the time Daenerys walks back through the gates to where Tyrion and her small council are waiting, the reports are already coming in. The city guard has surrendered. The gates are open. The people are scared but alive. The soldiers have laid down their arms, but the Red Keep is still sealed. Cersei has locked herself inside with her last loyal guards, the Mountain, and whatever remained of the Lannister household. And she has sent a message, not a letter, not an envoy, just a single line delivered by a frightened servant who could barely get the words out. The message is this: "The Iron Throne belongs to the Lannisters. Come and take it." Tyrion reads the message twice. Then he sets it down very carefully on the table, like he is afraid it might bite him. "Of course," he says flatly. "Of course she did." Daenerys reads it. Her face doesn't change. She folds the message, sets it aside. Then she looks at Jon Snow. Jon is standing at the edge of the tent. He has been quiet since they landed. Quiet in the way that means something is building inside him. His jaw is tight. His hands are at his sides. He is looking at the Red Keep on the hill, far away, like he is trying to solve a problem in his head that doesn't have a solution. "Jon," she says. He looks at her. She looks at him. There is so much in that look, so much that neither of them can say out loud. She knows what he is. She knows what he is. She knows what it means. She knows that somewhere in his head there are people whispering, "Sansa, Arya, the North," words like rightful heir and true blood, and the realm deserves better. She has known for weeks that this might break them apart, but right now, she needs him. "What do you suggest?" she asks. Jon is quiet for a moment. "Send someone in to talk to her," he says at last. "Give her a real choice, not just surrender or die. Give her something she can hold on to." Daenerys thinks about this. "Who?" Jon looks at Tyrion. Tyrion stares back at him. Then he looks at the ceiling of the tent. Then he lets out a long, slow breath. "Fine," he says. "I'll go." But Tyrion does not go alone, because that is when a new player steps onto the board, a young lord named Edric Fell. Lord Edric Fell is 22 years old, lean, with dark eyes and a quiet way of speaking that makes people lean in to hear him. He is the head of House Fell, a small house from the Stormlands with no great power and no great wealth. But he has one thing that matters more than either of those right now. He is respected by everyone. The Northern Lords trust him because his house stayed neutral during the war. The Lannister bannermen know his family name and have no grudge against it. The people of King's Landing know him as the man who spent 3 weeks distributing food in the flea-bottom slums before the battle even started. He came to Daenerys 2 days ago with a simple offer. "Let me help you build a peace that holds," he said. "Not just a peace that you win by force, a real one." She didn't trust him then. She doesn't fully trust him now, but she needs him. Edric Fell enters the Red Keep with Tyrion just after midday. They are allowed in through a side gate after a tense hour of negotiations through a closed door. The guards who let them in are shaking. The hallways are dark. Half the servants have already fled. They are brought to the throne room. And there is Cersei. She is seated on the Iron Throne in full queenly robes, her golden hair perfect, her chin raised. She looks exactly like she always looks. Like nothing in the world can touch her, like she has already won a game that everyone else thinks she is losing. The mountain stands behind the throne, enormous, silent, his eyes glowing faintly behind his visor. Qyburn stands to the side, his old hands folded, his thin mouth curved in a small, careful smile. And beside Cersei, clinging to her arm with white-knuckled hands, is Tommen, the boy king. 16 years old, pale and thin, his eyes red from crying. He looks at Tyrion when they walk in and something crosses his face. Not hatred, not anger, just a terrible sadness. Like a child who has been told by everyone around him what to feel and has finally run out of the energy to pretend. Tyrion stops in the middle of the throne room. He and his sister look at each other across the length of the room. A long moment passes. Neither of them speaks. It is Edric Fell who breaks the silence. "Your Grace," he says, bowing to Cersei, "my name is Edric Fell. I'm here because a lot of people are about to die if we can't find a better way through this. I don't work for Queen Daenerys. I don't work for you. I'm just a man who would like very much for this city to still be standing tomorrow morning." Cersei looks at him the way a cat looks at a mouse. It isn't sure it wants to eat yet. And what she says slowly. "Do you think you can offer me that a dragon cannot simply take by force?" Edric Fell meets her gaze steadily. "Your life," he says simply, "and Tommen's, and a future that isn't a dungeon." Inside the Red Keep, the conversation goes on for 3 hours. Outside, Daenerys waits. She is not good at waiting. She has never been good at waiting. Her whole life has been moved, running, surviving. Waiting feels like dying slowly. But she waits. She sits outside her tent with Mira, her handmaid, beside her. Mira is a small, dark-skinned woman from Astapor, freed years ago, who has served Daenerys faithfully ever since. Mira doesn't give advice. She doesn't make plans. She just sits with Daenerys in the hard moments, hands her water, reminds her to breathe. Right now, she is braiding Daenerys' silver hair with quiet, steady hands. "You thinking about burning it again?" Mira says. Not a question. Daenerys doesn't answer. Mira ties off the braid. "My mother's house burned when I was 4. Mira says quietly. "I don't remember much about it, just the heat and the way my mother screamed, and the smell of smoke for weeks afterward whenever the wind changed." Daenerys looks at her. She doesn't say anything. Mira smooths the braid with her thumb. "I used to think fire solved things," Mira says. "When I was in the pits, when bad men came, I used to think if only everything would just burn, then maybe there would be peace. And there is never peace after fire," Mira says. "Just ash. And then someone has to live in the ash, and usually it's the ones who didn't start the fire." Daenerys is quiet for a long time. Then she says, "Do you think she'll surrender?" Mira thinks about it honestly. "I think," Mira says, "that Cersei Lannister will do whatever she thinks keeps her children alive, even if that means swallowing the most bitter thing she has ever tasted." As if on cue, a rider comes from the direction of the Red Keep. Tyrion is on his way back. Tyrion looks tired in a way that goes beyond the body. He looks tired in the soul. He sits down across from Daenerys and is quiet for a long moment before speaking. "She'll surrender the throne," he says at last. The tent is silent. Jon Snow's head comes up slowly. "On conditions," Tyrion adds. "She wants Tommen's safety guaranteed. She wants a castle in the Westerlands with enough land to live on. She wants Lannister House to continue. She wants her name to survive. Not her position, just her name." Daenerys is still. Tyrion continues. "She also wants to be the one who walks out, not dragged out in chains. She wants to walk out of the Red Keep in front of the court and announce it herself." The room is silent again. "She wants to control the story," Jon says. "Yes," Tyrion says. "And you believe her?" Daenerys asks. "I believe," Tyrion says carefully, "that she is out of moves, and she knows it. And somewhere deep down beneath all that armor and all that ice, she loves her children more than she loves the throne. She always has." Daenerys looks at the table, then at the opening of the tent, where the city of King's Landing is visible in the distance, its towers still standing, its smoke still rising from cook fires instead of dragon fire. "Tell her," Daenerys says at last, "that I accept." Tyrion lets out the longest breath of his life. The next morning is gray and cold. The great hall of the Red Keep is packed. Lords, ladies, septons, soldiers. Every person in that hall is rigid with tension. Nobody knows what is about to happen. Half of them are expecting fire. The other half are expecting blood. Daenerys enters the hall first. She walks slowly, in simple, dark clothes. No crown, no jewel. Just her silver hair and her purple eyes and the quiet way she carries herself that makes the whole room hold its breath. Her small council walks behind her. Tyrion, Davos, Varys, Jon Snow, Edric Fell stands to the side, near the doors. The Iron Throne sits at the end of the hall, empty. Daenerys does not walk to it. She stops in the middle of the room and waits, and then Cersei comes in. She is wearing her queenly robes for the last time. Golden, perfect, every seam in place. Her hair is piled high, her chin is up. Her eyes are clear and cold and show nothing but her hands. Her hands are shaking. She walks to the center of the hall. She stops a few feet from Daenerys. The two women face each other. A room full of people holds its breath so completely that the only sound is the wind outside. No one speaks. Then Cersei does something that nobody in that room has ever seen Cersei Lannister do. She bows her head. Not a full bow, not a kneel, just a tilt of the chin, the smallest possible concession from the proudest possible woman. But it is enough. I yield the Iron Throne, Cersei says. Her voice is steady, just barely, to Daenerys of House Targaryen. A sound moves through the hall, not cheering, not celebration, just a wave of exhaled breath, like the room itself just stopped being afraid. Daenerys looks at Cersei for a long moment, then she says, quietly enough that only Cersei can hear, I could have burned it all. I want you to know that I know that, and I want you to know that I chose not to. Not for you. Not for your children, for the girl in the street who was holding her bread and trusting me not to destroy her world. Cersei says nothing, but something moves in her eyes. Something brief and real and quickly hidden, not guilt. Cersei Lannister doesn't feel guilt easily. Something more complicated than that. Something that might, in another life, have been respect. She steps aside. And Daenerys walks to the Iron Throne. She sits on it, and for a long moment she just sits there in silence. Later people will say it didn't look like triumph, it looked like prayer. But sitting on the throne and ruling from it are very different things. The weeks that follow are the hardest of Daenerys' life in a way that is completely different from any hard thing she has faced before. War is clean in its own brutal way. You know who the enemy is, you know what the goal is. You fight. You survive or you don't. Politics is a different kind of war. The great lords come to bend the knee, but their eyes tell different stories. Lord Royce bends the knee, but his mouth is tight and his hand barely grazes the floor. The Reach Lords smile too widely. The men of the Vale watch everything with careful, measuring looks. The Northern Lords don't come at all. Not yet. And everyone is whispering about Jon Snow. This is the thing Daenerys knew was coming, the thing she has been dreading since the moment she found out who he really was. He is Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar, the blood that the Iron Throne technically belongs to by the old rules that half the realm still believes in. Jon hasn't said anything. He hasn't made a move. He isn't plotting. Daenerys knows this. But other people are plotting on his behalf, whether he wants them to or not. Sansa Stark's ravens have been flying south at a rate that concerns every spy master in the city. The Northern Lords are talking. Words like rightful king are traveling on those ravens, like seeds being planted. Daenerys sits across from Jon in her solar on a rainy morning, and they look at each other across a table covered in letters and maps and reports. I know what they're saying, Jon says. I want you to know I have no part. I know, she says. I don't want the throne. I know that too, she says. But what you want doesn't always decide what happens. He is quiet. She picks up a raven scroll from Sansa. She sets it in front of him. He reads it, his jaw tight. She writes back to her lord, Daenerys says. She tells stories, and her stories are getting louder. Jon pushes the scroll away. What do you want me to do? I want you to go north, she says. Not as a fugitive, not in exile. As my Lord Warden of the North. I want you to go home, be with your family, and be part of this kingdom. And I need you to tell them, all of them, that you are not a rival, that you chose this, that this is what you want. Jon looks at the rain on the window for a long moment. And is it, he asks, what I want? She meets his eyes. Is any of this what either of us wanted? She asks quiet. I wanted to go home. I wanted my family. I wanted my dragons to still be alive and my friends to still be breathing. But this is where we are. A long silence. I'll go north, he says at last, and I'll tell them the truth. She nods. She looks back down at her papers. Jon, she says without looking up. Thank you. He says nothing. He just leaves. The city is slowly coming back to life. This is the thing nobody expected. After so much war, after so much fear, the people of King's Landing are Theobil, carefully, quietly, one baker opening a stall at a time, one blacksmith lighting his forge, one merchant hanging out a sign. The city starts to breathe again. Daenerys notices this. She walks through the streets, sometimes with a guard and sometimes with just Mira and she watches. She asks questions. She listens. She finds Sarah again on a Tuesday morning near the Gate of the Gods. The little girl is sitting on a wall, eating a proper loaf of bread this time, looking perfectly at home in the middle of a busy street. When she sees Daenerys, she doesn't bow or run away. She just waves, like she is waving to a neighbor. "You got better bread," Daenerys says. Sarah nods seriously. "The baker near the canal opened back up this morning. His bread is very good. He didn't used to let people like me in, but I think he feels bad now about things." "What kind of things?" Sarah thinks about it. "About being scared," she says, "and about not helping more when things were bad." She pauses. People feel bad when they were scared instead of brave. Daenerys sits next to her on the wall. "That's a wise thing to understand," she says. Sarah shrugs. "My mom told me before she died. She said being brave doesn't mean you weren't scared. It means you tried anyway." Daenerys is quiet for a moment. "Your mother was a smart woman." Sarah kicks her heels against the wall. "She said that you were going to come and you were going to be either the best thing or the worst thing that ever happened to us. She said she hoped you would be the best." Daenerys looks out at the street, at the people going about their day, at a city still standing. "I'm trying," she says. Sarah looks at her critically. "You doing okay?" she says. "The bread is better." "That's a good sign." Not everything is easy or warm. There are those who test her. 3 weeks after the surrender, a plot is uncovered. A group of Lannister loyalists, men who served Tywin and cannot accept a Targaryen on the throne, make a plan to assassinate Daenerys in her chambers. Varys uncovers the plot through a network of little birds he has been quietly rebuilding since arriving in Westeros. He brings her the names on a folded piece of paper with his usual expression of careful calm. She reads the names: 3 lords, 2 knights, 1 septon. All men who publicly bowed to her when she took the throne. All men who smiled and offered congratulations and promised loyalty. She sits with this for a long night. In the morning, she summons them. They come nervously, clearly suspecting something, but not sure how much she knows. She has them all in the small council chamber at once, facing her. The silence is terrible. She sets the folded paper on the table. "I know," she says simply. The men look at the paper, at each other, back at her. One of the lords, a wide, red-faced man called Lord Fossaway, begins to deny it. She raises one hand and he stops. "I'm not going to execute you," she says. Surprise runs through the room like a cold wind. She continues, "I'm not going to torture you or exile you or strip your houses of land and titles. Not today. I'm going to give you one chance. One. Because I believe that people can choose differently if they are given the opportunity, and they are not completely without sense." She looks at each of them in turn. She says, "But I need you to understand something clearly. I did not burn this city when I could have. Drogon and I could have turned every stone in King's Landing to ash in an afternoon. I didn't. And the reason I didn't is not because I am weak. Do you understand?" The room is silent. "I chose not to burn it," she said. Choosing not to destroy something when you have the power to destroy it. That is not weakness. That is the hardest thing there is. And I will continue to make that choice every day as long as the people of this city give me reasons to. She stands. "But if anyone in this realm gives me a reason to stop choosing," she says quietly, "I will stop choosing." She walks to the door. She stops with her back to them. "Swear your oaths again," she says. "Properly this time, and mean them, or leave this city tonight and never return. Those are your options." She leaves. Later, Edric Fell, who was standing just outside the door when this happened, falls into step beside her in the corridor. "That was either brilliant or extremely dangerous," he says. She doesn't look at him. "Both, probably." He is quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth," he says, "I think you're going to be a good queen. And I think the realm is going to resist you at every turn for years. But I think you're going to be a good queen." She glances at him sideways. "Why are you telling me this?" she asks. He looks ahead, thinking about it. "Because," he says, "I don't think anyone has told you lately, and I think everyone needs to hear it sometimes. Even queens." She says nothing, but something in her face eases. Just slightly. Mira finds her that night, sitting alone in the room behind the throne room. It is a small room, stone walls, one window, a cold fireplace. Nobody uses it for anything, but Daenerys is taken to sitting in it when she needs to think. Mira comes in with a candle and 2 cups of warm wine. She sits down across from Daenerys without asking permission. This is one of the things Daenerys values most about her. Mira does not treat her like glass. She sits, She speaks, she tells the truth. They drink in silence for a while. Then Mira says, "You're thinking about them. The ones you lost." Yes. Missandei, yes. And Jorah, yes. And the dragons. Daenerys wraps both hands around her cup. "I keep thinking," she says, "that they would have something to say about all this." Missandei would be smiling, but her eyes would be worried. Jorah would be standing in the corner looking like he hadn't slept, and finding some quiet way to tell me I was doing the right thing. She pauses. "I miss them," she says. "Not in the way songs talk about missing people. In a real way. Like a piece of you that is just, and there is a hole where it was, and you just have to learn to walk around the hole every day." Mira nods slowly. "My daughter died," she says simply. "When she was 2. Fever. I never talk about her." Daenerys looks at her. Mira is looking at the candle. "I named her after a flower I saw once in a garden in Yunkai. A yellow one, very small, growing up through a crack in the stone." Daenerys is very still. "After she died, I thought I would never stop hurting," Mira says. "And I didn't stop. Not really. But I learned to carry it. And carrying it made me stronger in a way that nothing else ever did, because I knew what it cost to lose someone, and I knew what it was worth to protect someone." "Poor look," said Daenerys. "That's why you're still here," Mira says. "That's why you didn't burn it. You knew the cost. You've always known the cost, better than any of them." The months pass. It is not a quick or pretty peace. Nothing about governing is quick or pretty. There are food shortages to deal with because the war destroyed crops in the Reach and the Riverlands. Daenerys empties 3/4 of the royal treasury to buy grain from across the sea. Lords complain about the cost. She tells them to go look at the children eating bread in Flea Bottom and then come back and complain about coin. There are disputes between houses that have been festering for years and now come flooding to the capital now that there is someone sitting the throne who might actually listen. Daenerys sits through these hearings for hours. She is not patient by nature, but she learns patience, or something close enough to it. Edric Feld proves unexpectedly valuable. He has a gift for finding middle ground in disputes, the ability to hear two people who hate each other and find the one thing they can agree on. He becomes her unofficial mediator, taking on the cases that would take all day in court and resolving them quietly in hallways and gardens before they ever get that far. She notices that people trust him in a way they don't yet fully trust her. She isn't jealous of it. She is glad of it. She uses it. "Lord Fell," she says one afternoon when they are walking in the castle gardens after a long council meeting, "I have a question." He falls into step beside her. "Of course, Your Grace." "Why did you come?" she asks. "In the beginning, with your offer to help. You had nothing to gain. Your house was safe either way. Why?" He thinks about it for a long moment. "My father," he says, "fought in Robert's rebellion. He was on the wrong side. Not from wickedness. He just made a choice and it turned out to be wrong. He spent the rest of his life carrying that, watching people suffer the results of a war he helped make, and not being able to undo it." He pauses. "Before he died, he told me that if I ever had a chance to step into a moment and make it go different, not for glory or reward, but just to make it go different, I should take that chance. He said most people don't get those chances, and the ones who do mostly stand to the side because they're afraid." Daenerys listens. "I wasn't afraid?" she asks. He smiles slightly. "Honestly, you terrified me. You still do, a little." She looks at him sideways. "But I thought," he says, "that a woman who could choose not to burn a city when every part of her wanted to, that woman is worth helping." In the north, Jon Snow is doing exactly what he said he would do. It is not easy either. Sansa is not happy. She is never directly hostile. Sansa has learned over years of surviving dangerous people not to be directly anything, but her unhappiness is a permanent weather pattern around her. Cold, gray, threatening rain. They have a long conversation in the great hall of Winterfell on a night when the snow is coming down hard and the fire is very loud. "She doesn't want us to bend the knee," Sansa says, her hands folded on the table. "She wants the North. She wants everything. She wants a united kingdom," Jon says. "That's not the same thing." "For the North it is." Jon looks at his hands. "Sansa, I know you care about her," Sansa says. Her voice is not cruel. She is trying in her own way. "But caring about someone doesn't make them right, Jon. It doesn't make them safe." "She didn't burn the city," Jon says quietly. "She had every reason to, and she didn't." Sansa is quiet for a moment. "This time," she says. Jon looks up. "She didn't burn it this time," Sansa says. "What about next time? What about the time after that? What happens when she's angry enough, or scared enough, or tired enough? What happens to the North?" Jon has no easy answer to this. He says, "I think she's trying. I think she is genuinely trying to be better than what she almost was." And I think we either help her do that or we make it harder. And if we make it harder, we are part of whatever happens next. Then she says, Arya thinks the same as you. John blinks. Sansa's mouth curves, just slightly. Arya says she watched her face when she flew over the city. She says you can tell a lot from someone's face when they think nobody is watching, and she says what she saw on Daenerys' face wasn't the face of someone who wanted to burn it. Jon stares at his sister. What was it? He asks. Sansa is quiet for a moment. Someone fighting themselves, she says. And winning. Spring comes. It comes slowly, the way it always does in Westeros, 1 inch at a time, winter retreating like a reluctant guest who has stayed too long. But it comes. King's Landing wakes up properly. Markets fill. Children run in streets. The harbor is full of ships again. A new building goes up in the place where one fell down. Sarah gets a proper apprenticeship at a cloth maker's shop near the harbor. Daenerys finds out about this because Mira mentions it one morning, having heard it from one of the handmaids, who heard it from a servant, who heard it from the harbor district. The news travels like water, finding its way through every crack. Daenerys sends a bolt of the finest blue cloth she owns to the clothmaker's shop, with no explanation and no name. She suspects Sarah will figure it out. She is right. A week later, a message arrives at the castle written in large, careful letters by a child who has only recently learned to write. It says, "Thank you for the cloth. I am learning to sew straight lines. I am not very good at it yet. The baker sends bread sometimes. Things are better, Sarah." Daenerys reads it 3 times. She keeps it folded in her sleeve for the rest of the day. On the first true warm day of spring, Daenerys climbs to the top of the highest tower in the Red Keep. She stands there alone in the early morning with the whole city spread below her, the rooftops catching the light, the harbor silver with water. Beyond the walls, the green hills beginning to wake up, the brown of winter slowly being replaced. She stands there for a long time. She thinks about Drogo, about Viserys, about her dragons, about Jorah and Missandei and all the people she loved and lost on the long impossible road from a slave market in Essos to this tower in this city. She thinks about what Mira said, about carrying the cost, about how carrying it makes you stronger. She thinks about a girl in a torn dress, holding a piece of bread and looking up at a dragon in the sky without fear, and then Drogon lands behind her with a sound like thunder, curling his great body along the rooftop, his golden eyes steady on her. She puts her hand on his neck. He makes a low sound, not a roar, something warmer than that. "We made it," she says quietly. "I know it doesn't look like the songs. I know there's no great moment, no clear victory, no cheering crowd, just this. Just mornings and bread and letters from a girl learning to sew straight lines." She looks at the city below her. "But it's real," she says, "and they're alive. And that's more than almost happened." Drogon breathes. The sun comes up fully over the walls of King's Landing, and Daenerys Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the 7 Kingdoms, stands in the light of it with her hand on her dragon's neck, and for the first time in longer than she can remember, she feels like she is home. As for the realm, Cersei lives out her years in a castle in the Westerlands, alone and proud and quiet. She tends a garden. She writes letters to Tommen, who serves in Daenerys' court and grows into a young man of quiet decency that surprises everyone who knew his mother. She never apologizes, but she never causes trouble either. Qyburn disappears quietly into obscurity. The mountain is finally put to rest by the Hound, who then retires to a small settlement on the quiet islands of the Quiet Isle, where he discovers to his enormous irritation that he is actually quite good at growing vegetables. Tyrion serves as Hand of the Queen for the next 16 years and drives Daenerys absolutely mad on a regular basis and is one of the 3 people she trusts most in the world, and there is nothing either of them can do about it. Edric Fell eventually becomes the master of laws and brings more genuine fairness to the courts of the 7 Kingdoms than anyone who held the position in the last 100 years, which makes him very popular with common people and deeply annoying to powerful lords, and he considers this an excellent result. Jon Snow stays in the north. He rebuilds the Night's Watch into something worth rebuilding. He hunts down the last of the White Walkers' influence in the far reaches of the world. He marries a girl from the mountains, a brave and practical woman named Alice Karstark, who calls him an idiot to his face at least 3 times a week, and who he loves completely for exactly this reason. He never stops being proud of Daenerys, and she never stops being grateful for the morning he looked at her across a tent and said, "Send someone to talk to her. Give her a real choice." Because that was the morning that saved the city. Mira stays at Daenerys' side until she is old and her hair is white and her back aches in the cold mornings. On those cold mornings, Daenerys makes her sit by the fire and brings her warm wine with her own hands, because some things you do not let your servants do. And Sarah, the clothmaker's apprentice, grows up to be one of the finest dressmakers in King's Landing. Famous for the blue silk gowns, she makes a particular shade of blue that people call dragon blue, though she never explains where she first saw it. She keeps a dragon scale on her workbench, a black one given to her by the queen on the day she opened her own shop. She never moves it. She touches it sometimes when the work is hard or the morning is cold, or she is feeling small in the face of the world. It reminds her of a woman who could have burned everything and didn't. It reminds her that you can be the most powerful thing in the sky and still choose to be kind. It reminds her what real strength looks like. That's our theory. Westeros is a world full of choices, and the most powerful ones are often the ones that happen in silence. The moment before the fire, the breath before the decision, the second where everything could go wrong and something inside you decides, not today. If you want to come with us as we keep asking these questions and keep walking through the roads not taken in the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next one.